Alright guys, so this is video 2. We're going to start talking about cutting up our kit pieces here. So the first thing we need to do is, in order to get this put together, we need to start making some walls. I like to start with the small walls because they'll give you a good idea of how to do everything on the bigger walls. This is basically what we're going to make, okay? It's this little wall right here. And in order to do this, we need to start cutting out the large studs and the plates. When you do this, on a typical job site, you always want to go through your pile of lumber. This is our lumber pile. And you want to pick out all the good pieces and all the bad pieces and divide them up so that you can get all the nice straight pieces as your plates, or use the big straight pieces without any defects for your large pieces. And then you can know which pieces are going to be good for making smaller ones. So let me demonstrate that here for just a second. So you can see here, this particular kit, I got a lot of knots on this end over here, right? So I'm going to want to cut all my big pieces out of this end if I possibly can, and then the remainders. So these are going to be these two pieces here. Oh, we got a little piece of tape left on there. These are going to be good for tall pieces. This one here is going to be really good for long, tall pieces. That's just got something on the very end. That'll probably get cut off as we're cutting everything. So that's good for long pieces. Maybe we'll make, one long out of this and then a short piece. So, okay. So you can see how I've kind of separated these. These pieces will make one good sized long piece, then short ones. So I want to cut all my short pieces out of this stuff here. Over here, this is good for all long stock. The other thing we could do is I could take all of these pieces, and if I line them up to my eyesight, I'll kind of try and take a short piece. I can line this up for you guys. If you sight down the board like this, you can kind of see whether or not it's crooked or it's straight. And if you got any issues, you're going to have to get out as well. So let's set these aside for a second. I'm going to keep these in two different piles. And I'm going to start using this stuff up first so that I'm carefully working around the knots. And the way that we're going to do that is I'm going to hold this really accurately to this end. I can't quite, with the camera that I've got going on and everything, can't quite see it. So I'm just going to hold this right on my pencil line here so that I can butt that up to it. And then I am going to mark this end where I want to cut it. And then, now that I've got a mark on this end, let me bring you in a little closer. Okay, so with this mark, since this is the mark, this is the good side, and this is the cut side, I'm going to put a little X right here because this is the side of the line that I want to cut on. Okay. Now, I need to use this little miter block. So before I use this miter block, you can see it's got some rough surfaces to it. I need to do a little bit of sanding. I don't want to do a lot of sanding, but I just want to do a little bit of sanding. The way that we're going to do this is I take my sandpaper and I just kind of make a hitchhiker's thumbs up, and I put the sandpaper in here, protecting my thumb so that my thumb is the backer. And then I can use my thumb to pull against the edge. You'll notice that the paper, my blueprint's down on the table here. This is going to be what's protecting my desk from all of this stuff. And I'm just going to scrub all the rough stuff off of here. I got to get a little bit more in this really funky spot than I normally would on this project. Okay, I got all the splinters off there pretty much. And then over here where it could splinter, you always pull away from the edge. Okay, so I don't want to pull this way because I could splinter it more. I want to pull away from the edge, all the way around, just really lightly. I don't need a lot, just a little bit. Make sure my corners are soft and they're not going to hurt me later. Okay, all these long edges, I want to do the same thing. Just make sure there's no splinters. And we always sand in the grain direction. That way the paper and everything works in harmony, and we don't really have to sand as much, because if we sand against the grain fibers, then we kind of actually tear the fibers. And you can see I leave scratch marks in it here. You can see the scratch marks are pretty visible, even though I only did a couple passes. But if I sand this way, you don't really see any scratch marks there, right? So we always want to sand with the grain direction, in the same direction as the lines of the wood. That way it's hidden. It'll make less work for you later on, and everybody will think you're a master because it'll look good. Okay. So once we get all this thing cleaned up, I noticed that the saw on this one left this little bump right inside here. I don't know if you guys can see that, the camera here. You can kind of see it in here. See the little light reflection right in here. We need to sand that out so that our project can sit nice and tight in there. We wouldn't want to put a piece of wood up against here and then have a little crack or anything left over. We want it to sit nice and tight. So I'm going to fold my paper in half, and I'm going to get that corner right inside and just sand that for, 10 seconds until that little bump is gone. A little bit more, almost there. Okay, that's good, that's gone. I got to get this top edge here. Got some splinters on it. Okay. And looks like I got all the splinters pretty much off this thing. Got all the edges. Doing just a hand check. This little back edge needs a little attention. Okay. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you just want to be able to hold on to it without getting a splinter. So now that that's done, I'm going to take all this sawdust and we're going to transfer it into the garbage. And come back to cutting. So I'm going to, because I'm using a larger saw and I'm demonstrating this, I'm going to elevate this a little bit. But let's come back to this piece of wood that we're going to cut. So this X tells me this is the good piece. So the good piece is going to go inside the miter box. If we put the miter box on this way, I can line my line up with that and transfer my line all the way across. Okay, so you can see it clearly. And I'm going to line that mark up with the back edge here of the miter box. Then I can take my saw, it doesn't matter which saw you're using for this, and I'm going to hold my saw tight against this edge right here, but so that the cheek of the saw, where there's no cutting, it doesn't cut here, it just rides against it, it's going to be tight against the spot. Okay, and then I'm going to keep my saw nice and square to the miter box, nice and lined up, standing right behind it. And I'm going to really lightly start cutting. Okay. So then we have our first piece. This can then, let me back you up here so you can see. This piece will then get set in place here where it belongs, and then I will need to cut the next piece and the next piece. I need to do that until I have all of these long full-size pieces cut, okay? And then after all the big ones are cut, out of this stock with the funky ends on it, I'm going to then go back after all this good material is used up first, then I'm going to cut the little stuff out of here. I have a little plate here down at the bottom. I have another little plate here. We have the double top plate up here that's kind of small. We have this small little sill plate here. So there's several little pieces, all these little cripples that are in here. These cut pieces right here, this is not a long piece, it's divided by the sill plate and the header, so these are short pieces. We can cut those out of the leftover pieces after the long ones are done. So go ahead, I'm going to pause the video for a second, you pause the video, we're going to cut all the pieces and we're going to come back, you're going to cut it the same way, and I'll actually, let me mark one more piece out, we'll do it for you one more time, just as a reminder, and then I'll let you guys do it on your own. So again, I'm gonna hold this stick right at the line so that I can make sure that I'm accurate. That's good there. And then I'm gonna transfer that mark right there so I know that I'm really accurate as to where it goes. Put the X on the cut side. This is the good piece. So put the good piece inside my miter block. Line that line up so that see if I can see that. Can I get that to focus for you guys? So the X is there. The line is right in line with this little edge right here. Okay. Let's see. And then I'm going to just take my saw. And I'm not pushing down or anything really hard with the saw. I'm just going to keep it in alignment and just move the saw back and forth. With very little effort, I just try to move the saw back and forth, and the teeth of the saw will do their job. They will cut. Just trust the saw to do its thing. Don't put in a lot of effort. The more effort you really put into it, sometimes the harder it actually makes it. You just want to move the saw back and forth. Okay. And then you can see here, I'll come back up here. We've got the second piece put in place. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting out these pieces, and then we'll come back here in just a few minutes, and we'll start the next step. Go ahead and pause your video and go ahead and cut out your pieces. Okay, so I went ahead, I've cut a bunch of pieces out. It's taken a little while, but we're just going to lay them out now where they go so we know what we have and what we need. So it looks like this little area right here actually needs 3 pieces. I have a full-size piece here, a full-size piece there. And this has got a knot in it, but it's okay. It's still sturdy. We can still use it with the knot in there. It's not going to hurt anything. Now, this little edge piece here is one sideways piece. It goes like this. Then we have one like this that goes on its end. And then we got a couple more pieces here. Okay. So I have all these pieces cut out here. So the next thing that we need to do, and these were the leftover ones. You can see I have knots in them. They're not long enough to make any of these big ones, but this is still great material and still perfectly good to cut out, like this piece here, or this piece down here, or these up here. Or even these pieces in here, the jack studs for the window area. This is going to be great for that. So the next thing is to cut out the plates. Typically on a job site, you're going to cut out the plates first, but in this situation, I wanted to cut out all the long pieces first, and we only have 2 long plates. So let's go ahead and cut those out next with the long material that we have left, and then we're going to start cutting out all the short ones. So these pieces, top and bottom, are next. Now remember, we tried to not use up the short material here, so we're going to just go ahead and cut these out by marking them. Here right on the plans. Actually, we're to right here. And then once I get this piece cut out, we'll come back with the next video having the plates cut out.